Hello everyone, I'm Valentina Rossi, marketing specialist for Zappi Group. I would like to welcome to you to this session, and please remember that this session is also being recorded and will be available to watch on demand following this session. If you have any questions during the session, please add them to the question and answer. You can find the tab to the right of your screen. Note that your question will be sent privately, so don't worry. With that, I would like to introduce our speaker. So welcome to Felix Garrad, Market Product Manager from Linde. He will be speaking today about the power sources transition in material handling. Welcome, Felix.
Hello everyone. Happy to join this presentation made by Zappi, and I will be happy to talk about, therefore, the transitions of in energy for the material handling, at least for Europe, and more specifically for the French market, because I'm a specialist here for the French market. So obviously, my presentation and my knowledge is a little more tuned towards this market. But if you have any questions, please feel free to raise them at any time and we'll answer them at the end of this presentation. And even if it's not related to the French market, I'll do my best to try and give you the feedback you need. So at least for the French market and what we can see as the trends, even if in most of the EU we've got figures that are similar to this. You'll notice that at the top here, you can see that 10% of the trucks sold in material handling are in IC trucks. The rest, such as pallet forks, pallet stackers, and counterbalance trucks, are already electric. So the transition towards electric has already been done some years ago. However, this trend is still evolving and will continue to reduce. And you'll realize that if we consider for 2030, you will notice that the market for IC trucks will continue to reduce. And you'll find that some of those trucks will go again towards lead acid batteries. But we're having a new battery who came out more or less in 2015 to go towards lithium-ion. And this is where it's going to help for these last customers who did not switch to lithium-ion, and will also help some other customers who had some already switched to a counterbalance, which will also go towards lithium-ion in the future. And this trend will be also, is already now being followed now with the pallet forks and all other smaller warehouse products to go towards lithium-ion as well. So we'll find that in 2030, the take rate of lead acid and lithium-ion will be more or less par on par compared to what we used to have in the past, where we only had a storage of electricity with lead acid batteries. And you may notice that maybe there is a solution that I not talk about here, and it's actually hydrogen. You'll see that hydrogen is also a factor that's coming in for the future. However, hydrogen is not going to be a very high take rate in France. However, this is not specific to, this is specific, to the French market, but not specific to the rest of the EU. Mainly in France, we've got a little specificity, which is the fact that we have a nice power grid, which means that it's very favorable towards peak charging and having big demands on electricity. Very often, and what you'll find in lots of countries in the EU, the grid is not available to be able to bring these big power demands directly from the customer. So even if we can actually produce the power, we can't carry the power to the market. And that's where today hydrogen is a good solution for this to answer this demand. However, in France, we're lucky that we don't have too much this constraint. And that's the reason why, at least we believe, today that in the French market, H2 will remain relatively low. Maybe slightly bigger than this, but it will not be a big market changer like lithium-ion is currently doing in this market. Actually, before we go into the details and going through, which energy should we choose? Well, this is going to be the whole trend of this presentation. We need to understand is that there is not one single solution to be able to answer the demands of the customers. What we need to understand is that there are multiple factors you are going to need to be understood, and that way you'll be able to choose the energy that suits best the application. So there is a bit of environment. I touched on that quite quickly here about having like the electricity available is a solution should I go electric. But there is also other priorities that we need to understand, such as, do I want to reduce my carbon footprint, or is the energy needs to be as cheap as possible? These are other factors that we need to consider. And I'd like to give you a little bit of an oversight on the different opportunities and drawbacks of each energy, based basically on customer priorities and customer objectives. So first thing that a customer normally is looking at is money. And I'd say price. Price of running the trucks, or price for investing in the capital. So running costs and so on, it's operation expenses, so OPEX. And you'll find also the capital invested, so the price of the trucks, the price of investment in the grid, and that will be your CapEx. Obviously, the target is to make sure that you want to go for the cheapest on both scenarios. So you want to be basically in this little box down here on the left-hand side. We'll realize is that IC trucks, if you look at LPG or diesel trucks, they are very low on CapEx, which is the great benefits. Unfortunately, the operating costs, especially when the price of LPG and diesel are going out the roof at the moment, you'll realize that the operating costs are very high. And that's where today you'll find that a transition towards maybe lead acid is slightly better. The fact that we've got a nice grid in France makes that the lead technology is not that much more expensive than an IC solution. And lithium-ion is slightly more expensive on the CapEx side, but with a low operating cost because you have a better throughput of these batteries. So the batteries are giving back just as much energy than it would be covering in the first place. Then you have another technology which is called H2, so hydrogen. Hydrogen, for the moment, could change in the future, but I don't think there will be a big change in a short time. It requires a very high capex, so very high initial investment. We'll talk about the reason why in a little further away in the presentation. I need to understand basically the charging capacity, so bringing the hydrogen to the truck is very expensive compared to just bringing electricity to the truck. If we look at another key factor and start on top of the solution, is mainly, is my energy cheap, but maybe is my energy very high in CO2 emissions? And this is a trend who's being really looked into very closely for the last 3 years. Again, we want to be on the bottom left. Cheap energy with very two CO2 emissions. The other solution would be maybe to choose the choice to go towards the IC solutions is maybe not the right one at the moment, and that's actually one of the big reasons why IC is losing in interest, is mainly because diesel and LPG is very expensive and it's got a very high CO2 emissions. Unlike if you go towards solutions such as lead acid, which is, at least in France, electricity is relatively cheap, and lithium-ion is even cheaper. And with lower CO2 emissions, because we've put lower CO2 emissions on lithium-ion compared to lead acid, because you've got a better throughput, you'll realize that you are consuming less electricity. So you've got lower energy cost, but less electricity consumed means less CO2 emissions as well. So that's also a nice advantage. H2 is a little bit of a difficult situation to be able to place correctly today. The energy cost of H2 at the moment is very high, but this will be changing in a very short future, we believe, with the investments at the moment from the EU at least, and I see all over the world actually, the H2 will become a molecule which is going to be available already as from 2024, 2025. So we can see that H2 could come into closer situations, at least at the same price as LPG, maybe even cheaper. We've tried to put here as being quite optimistic and can believe that the energy cost could actually become cheaper than LPG. The CO2 emissions all depends where the H2 comes from. If it's from renewable energies, then it can be it can have like a net interest of CO2 of 0. However, if it continues to be coming from gray solutions such as methane and so on, then you can have a CO2 emissions at a high rate of LPG. So that's the reason why, for the moment, we put it in an intermediate solution, not saying it's not perfect. And I'm just saying that today, make sure if you want to go for someone which is green, you need to go for also green hydrogen. So going from green solutions. Now, the last one is very often, and that's where I think IC found all its benefits, is productivity and truck availability. We want powerful trucks, and we want them to be able to lift heavy loads, pull heavy trailers, and we want them to be always available. So it means quickly charged, always the energy, always available to keep our trucks up and running. And that's where IC was the perfect solution. You'll realize that basically, 5 minutes and the truck is full again, and you can continue running for the next, 5 to 8 hours without any problems. That's where, unfortunately, if you're going towards lead acid, that was very often a big issue. For the bigger trucks, we used to not be able to offer electric solutions on the biggest trucks with the most powerful trucks. And you also find that a lead acid battery takes more or less 8 hours to charge at best. So that's where today you need to find a solution. 5 minutes, 8 hours, there's a big problem in the middle. Lithium-ion is better because lithium-ion can be charged in roughly 2 hours, depending on the size of the charger and different lithium-ion, but let's say give or take 2 hours. And you'll find, as far as productivity is now, that we are able to get a truck which is just as efficient in lithium-ion than in lead acid, than in AC trucks. And so that's where today you find all the benefits. If you want to try and improve the uptime, you can actually still go towards maybe H2. You can get really close to IC vehicles. I did not put it identical to IC because I did say that you could have like 6 hours autonomy with an IC vehicle. You might need to refuel your truck twice as much in H2 compared to IC. Mainly, we need to find a room to install a sufficient amount of H2 on the vehicle. But the charging, the reloading of the battery or the fuel cell will last approximately the same time, so roughly 10 minutes. So that's giving us a little bit of an insight on the different solutions and the different benefits of the different technologies that we currently find in the material handling world. I'd like to do a little focus because this is where I'm seeing the new trends on the two different technologies you are taking on and is already taking on steam, which is lithium-ion, and will take on, I guess, in the next few years, which is H2. And let's talk a little bit for them at start, a little more about this H2 technology. So H2, first thing is, how does it work? So we'll be talking about a fuel cell solution. What is a fuel cell? So we start with a normal electric truck. And what we're doing is that we are replacing this lead acid battery by a fuel cell. So the core of the truck, which is the battery, you can see this red box here, is no longer a lead acid battery, but a fuel cell. Inside a fuel cell, you will find some stacks. Inside of each of these stacks, there's an anode and a cathode. You'll be injecting hydrogen towards the anode, and through the anode towards the cathode, you are going to react this H2 to be able to go towards the oxygen on the cathode. And that is basically you're sucking through the H2 towards your O2. During this reaction, an electron is being pulled off the H cell, and this is what's producing electricity. And once it's arrived towards the cathode, the hydrogen and the oxygen is going to react together, and H and O2 means that it's going to become water. And this is basically how, in a very short nutshell, we're producing an H2 fuel cell. This electricity can be used in two manners, or it's being used directly by the vehicle, or it's going to be stored for later use on a fuel cell battery, on a lithium-ion battery, and to be used on during the peak power times. Once that is up and running, you actually have a standard electric truck. What you will, sorry, next slide. I'm just doing a bit of self-promotion here. Even if I said French market was interested in going fuel cell, you need to understand is material handling is already quite advanced on hydrogen. And if you want to go hydrogen, for example, our brand has already got 80% of their product range in fuel cell. And I'd like to also self-promote the fact that we're actually also producing our own fuel cell in-house at the moment, only for 24-volt trucks, but we can also promote, we can offer fuel cell solutions. Why would you go fuel cell in the future? Well, should you go fuel cell, it would depend, maybe could it depend on the application? Maybe it's better for heavy goods, maybe it's good for logistics centers, or is it any better for industry? Well, in reality, we don't really care the application. What we're more interested in is on the way you actually work. You want to be working in a multi-shift application with pretty high demands, so at least in 2.8 or maybe 3 and 5.8 applications. You want to have a pretty extensive fleet. You want to have quite a lot of trucks in your depot, and you want to be able to be normally in the equivalent of a 2 lead acid shift application for those batteries. Why do you want to go with these big application use rates? Is because if you were going for smaller solutions, you could actually stick to lead acid or lithium ion, which would be much cheaper for both running costs and investment costs. To be able to make it justified viably, you need to have quite a big fleet, because that's the reason why we say at least 50 to maybe 100 trucks on the same location, because you need the infrastructure for H2 in this solution. And the infrastructure on H2 is pretty high. You will realize that you need, outside of your building, you want a storage area for H2, which is going to become an ATEX zone, so you need to consider this as well. You will be storing this with a compressor, which is going to compress at very high pressures. For the moment, material handling is sticking to the 350 bar threshold, not the 700 bar, which is going liquid, which you could see on other industries. But today, material handling is only sticking to 350 bars, which is huge already. 350 bars, just to understand, LPG solutions is around 3 bars. A tire of a heavy goods truck on the road is around about 6 bars. We are now storing at 350 bars. It's a huge amount of pressure. So it means that these tanks are way much more expensive than an LPG tank. And the compressor is just as expensive as well. And once you go there, you also want a filling station. You want to bring the filling station into the depot. And that's also something which is going to be expensive, because you need to be able to find a solution to be able to release safely this 350 bars in the trucks. Good news, I'm not talking about science fiction. It exists and it works, but I'm just saying that it's not cheap. And I don't want to get you afraid of it. I'm just wanting to make you sure that when you start considering this, we need to consider that these outside infrastructure, we're not talking about the trucks, we're not talking about the electricity, we're just talking about the infrastructure. We need to talk about €500,000 to maybe over €1 million of investment to be able to do this on top of the trucks and so on. That's where today, why we need to go for big vehicles. The opportunity for this is that you're not relying on the electricity grid, and you can therefore make sure that you just get the hydrogen. You can even have a few days of autonomy to make sure that you are completely independent of the grid. And if your country's got electric shortages, or if you can't have electricity available, it's a completely viable solution, and we don't have to stick to IC. And this is where we can actually see that H2 is maybe a solution for the future. But now, if you've got electricity, let's go back to maybe the core of the material handling today, and what we well know. There was lead acid, and now we can see that something is taking over is lithium ion. Well, how does a lithium-ion battery work now? So we're going back again. We're going from a standard battery inside this truck. And inside this battery, we are actually integrating these, we made some modules, and inside of these modules, you will find some cells. These electric cells, again, a bit like what I was talking earlier, are made of aluminium and copper, but that's not something we're too interested. This is just to get the power through, while we're interested in the anode and the cathode. The cathode is basically your lithium-ion magnet, and the anode is your sponge for lithium-ion. What you actually, and around all this, you will find that you have this little separator in the middle, and around all of that, you have electrolyte. And it's in the electrolyte, you have the lithium-ion. So the lithium-ion in a lithium-ion battery is roughly 1%. So lithium-ion is mainly composed of everything except lithium-ion. What's happening is when you're charging, you're pushing the lithium towards this graphite. So you're basically pushing the lithium-ion into this big sponge. Once the lithium-ion is completely pushed on one side, your battery is fully charged in the anode. When the battery is discharged, your cathode, which is your magnet towards lithium-ion, and that's where the lithium-ion, you can see that you've got different technologies, and we're talking about first phosphate, we're talking about nickel, cobalt, manganese, is mainly what this lithium-ion magnet is made out of. And this is what actually sucking out on the other side, the lithium-ion. And when the lithium-ion is being pulled through, it's taking on, again, this little electron to be able to push the power through. This movement can be done at any moment and can be switched at any time. So you can do partial charging without any problems. The only thing you need to make sure is that the battery is not fully discharged or not overcharging as well. And that's why the batteries are equipped with a BMS, battery management system, which is always connected and talking to both the truck and the charger. And so you can see here that you've got a communication between the charger and the battery, which you wouldn't have on a standard lead acid. It's something which we're getting much more advanced than what you would have on your mobile phone, for example, just to improve the safety because we've got bigger batteries and we're making sure that we'll never have a problem. This is great on this solution. As I said, you can do partial charging and you can also do very fast charging because these solutions emit very less heat. So the opportunity for you to do is basically install the chargers where the trucks are not being used and where basically the operator is going to stop. So very often it's like what you can see on the left of the truck, a little coffee machine, or maybe next to the restrooms or to the cafeteria, and basically making sure that the truck is being charged when the truck is not being used. And that way you're making sure that you can actually get the truck up and running anytime you want. So you're basically charging the truck when the operator is also recharging his own batteries. So now, what's coming next is, again, a little bit of promotion. All our trucks are today available in lithium-ion. And you will also have a pretty big range. You need to make sure to maybe not overcharge and making sure that you got the battery the right size. Don't go for always the biggest one. Go for the battery you need. And the same thing, go for the charger you need depending on the time you have to charge. You don't have to go with a really big charger, which is going to really put a lot of dependency on your grid. Go for the charger you actually need. And unlike lead acid, lithium-ion is great because you can, if you go for a smaller charger, you're not going to do partial and bad charging of your battery. What you will only do is discharge your battery slower. And that's, if you got the time to charge, it's great because you are just not putting the strain on the infrastructure and reducing your infrastructure requirements. So why would you choose lithium-ion? You would choose lithium-ion for its efficiency because you have a solution which is emitting very little energy and you're consuming very much less energy. So you're actually reducing your power bill. You have also a solution which is a high performance battery with a very long lifetime. You actually find that your battery will last 2 to 3 times the life of a standard lead acid battery, which is helping on getting the price of lithium-ion at the same price of a lead acid if you consider the whole lifespan of this lithium-ion battery. Very often in lead acid, once the battery is discharged, you can't really continue. You have to wait for 8 hours. On lithium-ion, 10-minute charge, you at least got an hour ahead of you of more work to be able to continue. and you will not damage your battery if you're doing these kind of opportunity charging, which we sometimes also see in lead acid. And if you were on big applications, you don't have to worry about battery changes, so no risks of dropping the batteries, injuring your personnel who's doing the changing of these batteries. Battery in warehouse products is something between 150 and 600 kilos. You've got rollers, you've got nice things to change them, but it's still just moving by hand, or even if you're getting some implements, these big masses. And so you can have some accidents that can occur. So that's the reason why you will find that going towards lithium ion is very often also a solution to solving these issues. And the last one is comfort. Don't need to move these big masses, but also you will also find that you've got no emissions of hydrogen. So it means that you don't need charging rooms, or no risk, at least for the operators. And you've got a battery that's got a zero maintenance. And so if you put together the improvement in efficiency, in performance, in flexibility and comfort, this is the reason why we can see, as from already a few years in the transition in material handling, a lot of people who are switching to lithium ion. You can have all the advantage of an electric truck without all its drawbacks. And so basically you're nearly finishing with an IC trucks with the turnover of an electric truck, which is exactly what I think everyone wants. So in conclusion, the conclusion is what we just said at the beginning, is what energy should we choose? Because in the end, there is no specific answer. It's only the energy that suits your application. And that's where today you will realize that you just need to answer the questions that you need to answer. What are your priorities? And we can fit the truck that you would need. On this, I think there are some specialists. I mean, we are some specialists there to help. If you don't know which energy you need to choose, ask some people. We're there to help. There's other people as well. Just make sure that the battery you choose is in line with your application, with your needs. You got enough energy in your batteries, both lead acid, lithium ion, I don't care. The question is making sure that if you're especially switching from IC back to electric, go for the battery you would need, with the autonomy you need, with the chargings that you would actually need as well. If you need to see you want to compare as well, how much is your savings? This is something we can actually do, and most of us can actually do as well, is making sure and giving you the savings that you would be doing, and so your true operating costs, depending on the different energies you would choose. And at last, if you want to understand your return on investment and see how much you would invest, then we can also give you some guidelines. So that's where I'd say I don't have a perfect solution, but I'd say that today we've never had so many choices in the market. I'd say there is some energies that are being phased out, not saying that they're already disappearing, but we've got some energies that are being phased out, and we've got some new solutions coming through to be able to really push forward, such as H2 and hydrogen today. So, well, that's giving me a little bit of an insight on this presentation. Valentina, have we got any questions here?
Yes, we have some questions. In the meantime, we had some problems during the video, but the support is trying to fix the streaming. So be patient, please. In the meantime, the first question, we have a couple of questions actually. First question, can we have a more concrete examples when to choose basically each energy?
Yeah, of course. Well, actually, I was anticipating a little bit this question here, because I came in with a very generic solution and I was not giving you much feedback. So if you want to quantify, you want to quantify the savings that you would be able to choose depending on the energy, I guess.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So if you want to see the impact on the energy cost, you can see here, this is a presentation I did on the energies of the 1st of January 2022. Only thing is I added on top of here the increase that I've seen in France, linked to the fact that we no longer have some untaxed fuel. And so we have to buy the same fuel as you used to have on road vehicles. And so you can see here that the price of the diesel has gone rocket high, basically since the 1st of January 2023. I did not put the price of energy in 2023 because especially on electricity, and LPG, depending on the contracts for who you're talking to, you can find that some customers have doubled and some of them haven't. So I didn't want to go into too much details, but what I wanted to show is this is definitely something that's happened to everyone because the taxes are the same for everyone. And the price of the diesel has not gone down. So this is price of 22, except that we've added here the prices of the fact that we've removed unfuel. And you will realize here is that we have 60% reduction on the price of the energy. So to be able to do the same job, you would have an energy cost which is 60% cheaper if you were to go towards electric, and maybe roughly 55% cheaper if you were to go towards a lead acid solution. So it means that going from IC to electric makes very quickly a lot of sense.
So the other question is there a big energy difference between the different technology solution? And the last one is, what is the CO2 impact of each solution?
So
20 minutes, basically. So
yeah, sure. So the CO2 emissions, that's something as well. That's great. It's my next slide. So let me get these logos up. In France, we've got the chance of saying that we have a very little carbon footprint for electricity. And so should you choose, to go electric, lead acid, lithium ion, or even H2 produced from an H2 source, you will realize that the H2 solution would be would have a much lower carbon footprint compared to any IC solutions. If you're going H2 with a gray solution, this could be slightly different. Sorry, what was the previous question that you asked?
There is a big energy difference between the different technology solution that basically you propose.
Yes, sorry, yeah. Well, that was... The questions come through?
No?
No? Okay. Well, I'm going to come in because I've also prepared another slide. And I just would like to show this as well and give you a little more facts and figures. When financially you should go from diesel to electric to lithium ion. And in the end, it depends on what is your use rate of your trucks. Today, if you were to go towards, if you've got an IC truck and you want to go towards lithium ion or lead acid, or basically electric, any truck, if it's from a pallet stacker towards a 3 or maybe 8 ton truck, the number of hours are more or less always the same. You need to consider that if you use your truck very little, your return on investment will be very slow. You can see here your initial investment followed behind by your operating costs. At the bottom here, the gray line is the green line is your IC truck, and the blue line is your electric trucks. Initial investment higher, what I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. However, return on investment nearly 8 years. So it's true that if you have a very low use of your truck, you'll find a very slow return on investment. As soon as you start increasing the number of hours the truck will actually do, you will find that your return on investment will be quicker. And so you'll be going down to roughly 5 years in most of the scenarios. If you continue increasing the number of hours, then you'll be switching, for example, to a two battery solution. So you're going to have a big gap in your initial investment, which is here. And you are increasing at least by 5, maybe 10,000 euros to be able to go for maybe 2 lead acid batteries, or to go towards a bigger lithium-ion battery. But even still, you see that your operating costs in IC will just go higher, and you'll see that your return on investment will stay very close. And in the end, the more you use a truck, the quicker your return on investments could be. Now, the next question that I was hoping to get, but I'll give you anyway, is going towards when you choose lead acid to lithium ion. And again, it's down to the number of hours of the trucks. If you're going towards less than 600 hours a year, you got very low application, you have a very low use for your trucks, then you've got the choice between lead acid, gel, and lithium ion. If you want to go in, I would now, if you want to keep the initial investments as low as possible, lead acid makes sense. If you want to consider reducing the maintenance of your batteries and you consider the whole full life cycle of your batteries, consider lithium ion. You should not consider gel batteries. So this is where the two solutions are still viable. It depends on your priorities. If you're going on a slightly higher application, such as between 600 and 1,200 hours, then you will realize that you can go for a solution for both lead acid or lithium ion. Again, just depends on your priorities. If you want to keep your initial investments as low as possible, lead acid is cheaper. But if you want to consider your whole running costs, you will realize that lithium ion is cheaper. But you need to consider the time you're spending to put more water in your batteries, the time you're spending to be able to switch those batteries as well. Now, during the life cycle of your truck. If you can go over 1,200 hours a year, then you have to go for a dual set of batteries. There is no trucks who will be more or less capable of being able to keep in one single battery with 8-hour daily charge, won't give you the autonomy you need with one single lead acid battery. So you are now on 2 lead acid batteries, or else you can go for a big lithium ion battery or a bigger lithium ion charger. And that's where today you'll find that a lot of the customers are in dual shift batteries, and that's for me a mistake. You will realize that the return on investment is very short. The risks are way reduced, and you'll find that in the end, you're just making happier operators if you're going towards lithium ion. And that's where today I would really strongly recommend you choose a lithium ion solution. It would be maybe the most important solution, ideally. Have we any more questions?
No, I don't see nothing. Also because maybe we have some problem, but okay, I see that right now for someone works. So I think I just want to say thank you for joining us at this event. Thank you, Felix, for your presentation. You can find the record video available at the end of the call, of course. And we try to fix all the issues with this platform. Sorry for that. So thank you, Felix, and have a nice day.
Have a nice day. Thank you very much. Goodbye.